The hall of crystal light stretched before him, vast and silent. Ryan's boots echoed faintly on the polished floor as he walked forward, each step measured, each breath heavier than the last. He had seen pictures of the Kirin throne chamber before, but standing here was different. The walls shimmered like frozen rivers, alive with shifting patterns of blue and silver. High above, glowing strands of light hung like stars caught in glass. The place was beautiful and cold, like a night sky carved into stone. Ryan knew hundreds of eyes were watching him. The court of the Kirin Empire stood in orderly rows along the sides of the hall. They were tall and graceful, with long limbs and silver-marked skin that caught the light. Their eyes glowed faintly, the mark of their people, and though their faces seemed calm, he could feel the weight of their judgment. To them, humans were still young, still untested, a species that had only just stepped into the great map of stars. And at the far end of the hall, on a throne shaped from a single crystal pillar, sat Queen Salira. She was unlike anyone Ryan had ever seen. Her crown was not of gold but of living light, strands of energy weaving above her head. Her eyes were sharp, silver like the rest of her kind, yet brighter, like twin moons staring through him. Her gown was woven from threads that shimmered between colors with every movement. She sat tall, her back straight, her expression calm and unreadable. Ryan felt his heart pound in his chest. He had been trained for this. Earth's council had chosen him not for his rank or power, but for his ability to listen, to learn, and to speak with patience. Still, standing before the alien queen, he felt the weight of his entire world pressing on his shoulders. He stopped at the base of the steps leading up to her throne. A hush filled the chamber. Every alien waited to see what the human would do. Ryan bowed low, the way humans bowed, his hand over his chest. When he straightened, Salira's eyes were already fixed on him, unblinking. "You are the voice of Earth," she said. Her words came through the translator pinned to his collar, smooth and clear. But though he heard them in his own language, he had already begun to notice the rhythm of her native speech beneath the translation, soft patterns like music hidden under stone. "Yes, Your Majesty," Ryan said, his voice steady though his palms were damp. "I come as envoy for my people, to speak for peace and friendship." There was a stir among the gathered courtiers. Some tilted their heads. Some whispered to one another. Salira remained still. "You are small among the stars," the queen said. "Your people are young. Why should we give our time to those who have not yet proven their place?" The words struck him harder than he expected, though he had known such a question was coming. Humanity's reputation was clear, bold, eager, but weak compared to the ancient empires. Ships of Earth were quick to adapt, but they were not as powerful as the fleets of the Kirin. Humans had survived wars among themselves, but they had never faced the weight of the galaxy united. To the Kirin, humanity was a child knocking at the door of a vast palace. Ryan drew a slow breath. "Because every people must have a beginning," he said. "Even the oldest of stars was once a spark. You honor us by allowing us here. We wish only to grow, and to share in what we can offer." The queen tilted her head slightly, as though studying him. "Many come saying they wish to share," she said. "Most only wish to take." Her words cut sharp, but her tone was calm. The courtiers seemed to approve, their faint smiles hidden behind still faces. Ryan did not flinch. "I will not claim perfection for my people," he answered. "We make mistakes, we stumble, but we learn. That is our way. We do not stop at walls. We climb them. We do not fear the dark. We light it. We do not run from hardship." We endure it. A murmur spread through the hall again, though quieter this time. Some of the aliens regarded him with surprise, as though they had not expected such honesty. Ryan's heart still hammered, but his voice did not waver. The Queen leaned slightly forward, her silver eyes gleaming. You speak as though you have rehearsed these words many times. Ryan gave the smallest of smiles. I have thought of them many times, yes. But I mean them now, here, more than I ever could in practice. For the first time, something in the Queen's expression shifted. Her gaze softened, only slightly, but enough for Ryan to notice. She leaned back again, folding her hands in her lap. You have courage to speak so openly, she said. Courage is a flame that can warm, but also burn. We will see which you bring. She lifted her hand, and the courtiers began to move, signaling that the audience was over. Ryan bowed once more, though inside his thoughts spun in a storm. He had not failed. He had not been dismissed outright. The Queen had listened. That alone was more than many had expected. Yet he felt that this was only the first step on a long path. As he walked out of the crystal hall, he could still feel the Queen's gaze on him, sharp and curious, as though she were peeling away the layers of his heart. And though he did not yet know why, Ryan carried with him a single thought that burned brighter than the lights above the throne. He wanted to understand her. He wanted to reach her in a way no one else had. And deep inside, the idea had already begun to grow, the idea that words could be more than diplomacy, more than duty. They could be a bridge between worlds. The corridors of the Kirin Palace stretched like rivers of glass. Ryan walked slowly, guided by two attendants whose silver robes whispered against the floor. Behind them, tall windows revealed a view of the city below. Towers of crystal rose like spears, their tips glowing softly. Ships moved through the air, silent and graceful, shaped like wings of light. The sight should have filled him with wonder, but Ryan's mind was elsewhere. The Queen's voice lingered in his memory. Not the words that came through his translator, but the patterns beneath them. The Kirin language was more than sound, it carried rhythm, pauses, and tones that machines never captured fully. Ryan had studied fragments of it in secret, late at night before leaving Earth, using recordings smuggled from old archives. Most diplomats thought it unnecessary since translators could handle every word. But to Ryan, there was something powerful in hearing a thought as it was meant to be spoken. He reached his chambers, a high room with walls that shifted color as the day changed. The attendants bowed and left, leaving him alone. For a while he stood by the window, watching the alien city breathe. Then he pulled a small case from his bag and opened it. Inside were thin sheets of transparent film marked with strange symbols, the notes he had written during his studies. He whispered the words under his breath, repeating them carefully. The language was difficult, full of tones that did not exist in human speech. But he liked the challenge. Each word felt like a step into a world that was not his own, and yet he wanted to walk further. Hours passed. He practiced until his throat was dry. When he finally set the notes aside, night had fallen outside, and the city glowed like a sea of stars. Ryan sat down, closing his eyes. Tomorrow he would return to the council chamber. Tomorrow he would hear the Queen again. The next morning came quickly. The court assembled once more in the great hall. Delegates from other empires stood in their places, robes heavy with jewels, eyes bright with calculation. Each species had its pride, each its ambition. They had gathered here to discuss claims over distant systems rich in resources. For the Kirin, it was a test of power. For humans, it was a chance to prove they deserved a seat among the stars. Ryan entered with calm steps, though his chest tightened. He could feel the stares again, the silent judgment. He took his place near the center, where all envoys stood in a circle around the queen's throne. Salira watched from above, her face as unreadable as before. The talks began. One by one, the envoys spoke through their translators. Promises were made, threats were hinted, alliances whispered in careful words. The hall filled with polished voices, but to Ryan, most of them rang hollow. He listened, waiting, catching the tones in Salira's language whenever she replied. He heard strength in her words, but also something else, shadows of meaning the machines could not carry. When his turn came, Ryan bowed slightly and spoke through his translator, as expected. He offered words of respect, of peace, of cooperation. His voice was calm, but he could feel the queen's eyes on him, searching for more. He did not give it yet. Not here. Not now. The session ended, and the delegates left in waves. Ryan lingered behind, pretending to study the hall's carvings. In truth, he wanted one more chance to hear her voice. He found it when the queen rose and spoke to her advisors in her own tongue. The translator on his collar remained silent, unable to capture words not meant for outsiders. But Ryan listened. The sounds flowed like water over stone, sharp and soft, swift and lingering. He did not understand every word, but he caught fragments, enough to know she spoke of the humans with curiosity. A thought struck him then, bold and dangerous. If he could learn enough of her language, he could speak to her without the machine. He could reach her more directly than any envoy before him. He imagined her surprise, perhaps even her respect. The idea burned bright in his mind, almost too bright to ignore. That night, he studied again. He replayed the sounds he had heard, shaping them with his own voice. He corrected his tone, tried again, corrected once more. His throat ached, his mind swam, but he kept going. By the time dawn returned, he had mastered only a handful of phrases. Yet one of them was simple, and powerful. It was a phrase he had found written in the oldest of the archives, marked with careful notes. The translation given was imperfect, but the meaning was clear enough. It was not only a statement of affection, in Kirin culture, it was also a pledge of loyalty, of trust beyond borders. The phrase meant, "I love you." The next day, the council chamber grew heavier. Disputes sharpened. Delegates raised their voices, though still wrapped in courtesy. The question of who would control the contested system grew hotter, as each empire pressed its claim. When the queen raised her hand, silence fell. "You have spoken," she said, her voice ringing through the hall. "Now each of you will declare your people's intent in full. Speak clearly, without veil, so that all may hear the truth of your hearts." One by one, the envoys declared themselves. A tall envoy from the Vayner spoke of conquest. A delegate from the Joran spoke of dominance. Others spoke of profit, of strength, of endless reach. Their words filled the chamber with weight, but little warmth. At last it was Ryan's turn. He stepped forward, his palms damp. The translator hummed softly, ready to serve. He hesitated, his mind racing. He could speak as he was trained, with safe words of peace. Or he could take the step he had dreamed of, the step that might change everything. His eyes lifted to the queen. Salira sat still, her silver gaze fixed on him. The hall waited. Ryan drew a breath, slow and steady. And then he reached to his collar and switched off the translator. The silence was sharp. The other envoys looked at him with disbelief. The courtiers murmured softly, wondering what the human was doing. Ryan raised his head. When he spoke, his voice carried across the chamber not in his own language, but in hers. The chamber held its breath. The air itself seemed to pause as Ryan's words echoed against the crystal walls. No translator carried his voice this time. No machine softened or shaped his speech. He spoke in the language of the Kirin, sharp tones and flowing rhythms falling from human lips. At first, the courtiers whispered in confusion. Some tilted their heads, unsure if they had heard correctly. A few even laughed softly, as though it were a bold trick with no meaning. But as Ryan continued, their murmurs stilled. His accent was imperfect, but the words were clear enough to carry meaning. I speak to you, Ryan said in their tongue, his voice firm though his heart pounded. I speak not with machine, but with care, with learning, with respect. The courtiers shifted uneasily. The queen herself did not move. Her silver eyes stayed locked on him, steady and unreadable. He pressed on. I am Ryan, of Earth. My people are small, but we carry strong hearts. We do not wish to rule, and we do not wish to take. We wish to live beside others, to build, to grow. We seek not only stars to claim, but voices to hear, and hands to join. The court was utterly silent now. Every envoy, every alien stood still, as if the walls themselves were listening. Ryan felt his throat tighten, but he pushed through the fear. He reached for the phrase he had practiced more than any other. His voice grew softer, but steadier, like a torch held high in a dark cave. I love you. The words rang in the Kirin language, smooth yet heavy with meaning. It was not only a statement of affection. In the Queen's culture, it was a vow, a pledge of loyalty and unity. It carried a weight far beyond romance. It was a promise that one would stand unshaken beside another, through trial and shadow alike. The reaction was instant. Gasps filled the chamber. Courtiers stared, wide-eyed. A few stepped back as if the human had spoken forbidden fire. The other envoys turned sharply, their faces frozen with disbelief. None of them had ever heard such words spoken to the queen, not even from her own people. For the first time since he had arrived, Queen Salira moved. Her lips parted slightly. Her gaze, so steady before, flickered with something new surprise. You dare, she said at last, her voice quiet, her own language flowing. But it was not anger in her tone. It was wonder. Ryan bowed his head. I dare only with truth. I speak because I believe it. Not as one who seeks power, but as one who seeks to be understood. The queen leaned forward, her silver eyes searching his face as though she might pierce through skin and bone into the core of him. The silence in the chamber grew heavier, pressing against him like a storm. At last she rose from her throne. The court bowed low, but Ryan stood firm, though his chest pounded so hard he thought it might break. Salira descended the steps slowly, her gown shifting colors like dawn breaking over water. She stopped before him, taller than he, her presence vast and unshakable. You speak our words, she said softly. Few outside my people have ever done so. Fewer still have spoken that phrase. Do you know what it means? Ryan met her gaze. I studied enough to know. It is not only about love. It is about trust, about bond, about standing side by side. It is a promise. I speak it because it is the truth of what I hope for between us. Between my people and yours. The hall remained silent, the courtiers frozen in disbelief. The other envoys stared with tight jaws, some with anger, some with fear. A human had done what none of them dared. He had spoken words of unity to the queen herself. For a long moment, the queen simply looked at him. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand. With a single motion, she gestured to the chamber. "Leave us," she commanded. The court hesitated, but none dared defy her. One by one, the envoys and courtiers bowed and departed, their robes trailing behind them. Soon the great hall stood empty, its crystal walls glowing softly. Only Ryan and the queen remained. Salira stepped closer. Her presence filled the space around him, and yet her voice when she spoke was quieter than ever. "You risk much, human," she said. "Our language is not given freely. Our vows are not spoken lightly. If you spoke without knowing, it would be insult. If you spoke with false heart, it would be betrayal. Yet you stand here, and I see no lie in your eyes." Ryan swallowed, but his voice was steady. "I spoke because I believe. My people have little compared to yours. We cannot offer great fleets or ancient wisdom. But what we can offer is truth. What we can offer is trust. That is why I learned your words. Because I wanted you to hear me not as an echo through a machine, but as a voice reaching for you." For the first time, the queen's stern expression softened. Her eyes, still sharp, now held a flicker of something gentler. She studied him as if he were a puzzle, strange and unexpected, yet somehow worth keeping close. "You are unlike the others," she said at last. "They bring polished lies and veiled threats. You bring imperfect words, yet they burn brighter than theirs. Perhaps your people are young. But perhaps youth carries strength the old have forgotten." Ryan bowed deeply. His heart beat wildly, but hope swelled within him. The queen stepped back, her expression once more calm, though not as cold as before. "Go," she said. "Tomorrow we will speak again. I will test your words. If they are true, we shall see where they lead. If they are false, you will not stand long in this hall." Ryan nodded. "I understand, Your Majesty." He turned and walked out of the crystal chamber, the echo of his steps ringing in the silence. His chest felt lighter and heavier at the same time. He had done it. He had spoken to her in her own language. He had seen the surprise in her eyes, the flicker of respect, perhaps even curiosity. But he also knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning of something greater. Tomorrow would bring trials. Tomorrow would bring questions sharper than any blade. Yet he felt ready. For in his heart, he carried not only the courage of his people, but also the hope that words could build bridges stronger than iron. And though the galaxy doubted humanity, Ryan believed this was the first step toward proving them wrong. Morning light spilled into the palace through walls of crystal, filling the great chamber with silver and gold. Ryan entered slowly, his steps echoing on the polished floor. The memory of yesterday still burned in his mind, the moment when he had spoken the queen's words, the silence that had followed, the look of surprise in her eyes. He did not know what waited for him now, only that it would shape not only his fate, but Earth's place among the stars. The courtiers filled the hall again, their tall figures lined along the walls. The other envoys stood in their places, eyes sharp with suspicion and envy. Every one of them had spoken of strength, wealth, or conquest, yet the human had stolen the attention of the queen with a handful of foreign words. Some looked at him with anger, others with curiosity. Ryan kept his face calm, though his heart beat faster with each step. Queen Salira sat upon her throne once more, her crown of light shining above her. Her face was calm, but her eyes followed him closely as he bowed. The hall grew silent as she rose from her seat. "Human envoy," she said, her voice ringing clear. "Yesterday you spoke words no outsider has spoken to me. Today I will test them. For words without trial are empty." Ryan lifted his head. "I am ready, Your Majesty." The Queen's gaze sharpened. She raised her hand, and a section of the floor shifted. From beneath the crystal tiles, a circle rose, glowing faintly with patterns of silver light. It was wide enough for two to stand. "Step into the circle," she commanded. Ryan obeyed, his boots striking the glowing surface. The Queen descended from her throne and stood across from him. Gasps ran through the courtiers, for it was rare for the Queen to lower herself into such trials. She raised her hand, and the circle brightened. "This is the circle of truth," she said. "Here, every word is weighed. Here, lies falter, and only the steady heart can stand. You spoke of love, of loyalty, of unity. Show me now that your voice does not tremble when it is tested." Ryan felt the light warm beneath his feet. His throat tightened, but he steadied his breath. He could not turn back now. The Queen's first question came swift. "Why did you learn our tongue when all others trusted their machines?" Ryan answered without hesitation. "Because I wanted to hear your people as they truly speak, not as a machine repeats. A voice carries soul that no device can capture. I wished to honor that." The circle glowed brighter, and the courtiers murmured. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger. She continued. "Do you seek advantage for your people? Do you speak these words only to win what Earth cannot take by force?" Ryan took a steady breath. The truth weighed heavy in him. "I seek a future for my people, yes. But not by taking from yours. I wish for friendship, for paths shared, not stolen. If I spoke only to trick you, I would not risk your language upon my tongue." Again the circle brightened, steady and calm. The murmurs grew louder, for few envoys had ever stood in the circle and kept their voice so true. The Queen's gaze softened only a fraction, then sharpened again. "And the words you spoke yesterday, the vow of my people. Do you understand its weight? Do you know that to say I love you in my tongue is to pledge more than affection? It is to promise loyalty even unto ruin. Do you grasp this, human?" The chamber grew colder. Every courtier leaned forward. Every envoy watched in silence. Ryan felt his heart pound, but his voice came clear. "Yes," he said. "I understand. It is not a phrase for games or empty hearts. It is a vow of unity, a vow of standing side by side. I spoke it because it is what I believe. I do not fear its weight. I welcome it." The light of the circle rose like fire, glowing so bright that it lit the faces of every alien in the hall. The courtiers gasped, some with awe, some with disbelief. The envoys whispered furiously, unable to deny what they saw. Queen Salira stepped closer, her silver eyes locked on his. She studied him for a long time, her face unreadable. Then she spoke again, softer now, almost a whisper. "You speak with a heart unshaken. Few of my own would dare such words before the circle. Yet you, a stranger, speak them without faltering. Why?" Ryan swallowed, then lifted his head. His voice trembled not with fear, but with honesty. "Because I meant them. I do not see you only as Queen of the Kirin. I see you as someone I wish to understand, someone I wish to walk beside. I told you I love you because no other words carried what I felt in that moment. It was not strategy. It was truth. The chamber froze. Courtiers stared, envoys stiffened, and the air grew heavy as if the hall itself was holding still. The queen's eyes widened ever so slightly. For the first time, the mask of perfect calm cracked. She looked at him not as ruler to envoy, but as one soul to another. The light of the circle dimmed slowly, its glow fading into the floor. The test was complete. No falsehood had touched his words. Queen Salira stepped back, her gown shimmering with shifting colors. She turned to her court, her voice carrying strength once more. "This human has spoken with truth," she declared. "His words are no trick. His vow was not hollow. Remember this day. For Earth has sent one whose voice carries weight." The hall erupted in murmurs, waves of disbelief and wonder. The other envoys looked shaken, their carefully built speeches broken in a single morning. The courtiers bowed their heads in respect. But Ryan's eyes never left the queen. He saw the way she looked at him now, not as a fragile newcomer, not as a child of the stars, but as something unexpected, something equal. When the court was dismissed, and the others left in a storm of whispers, Salira remained for a moment longer. She looked at Ryan, her voice quiet enough that only he could hear. "You surprise me, human," she said. "Perhaps too much. But surprises can be gifts, or dangers. Time will show which you are." Ryan bowed deeply. "I hope to be a gift, Your Majesty." She turned, her crown of light glowing above her head as she ascended the steps once more. Ryan stood in the emptying hall, his heart racing but his spirit steady. He had passed the test. He had spoken the truth in the circle. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The queen's eyes had held more than judgment today. They had held curiosity. They had held a spark of something that had not been there before. And Ryan felt, deep inside, that his words had planted a seed. A seed that might one day grow into something greater than either of them could yet imagine. The city of crystal was alive with light. From his balcony, Ryan watched the towers shimmer as the morning sun touched them. Ships moved silently between spires, leaving faint trails of silver behind. The beauty of it all should have filled him with wonder, but his thoughts were not on the city. They were on the queen. He could still feel the weight of yesterday's trial. The circle of truth had burned beneath his feet, demanding honesty with every word. He had spoken, and the light had answered. He had confessed openly before her court, even daring to say that he loved her. Instead of scorn, he had seen surprise in her eyes. A door had opened, though he did not yet know where it would lead. A soft chime pulled him from his thoughts. The door of his chamber opened, and a Kirin attendant entered. The tall figure bowed slightly. "The queen requests your presence," the attendant said. Ryan's heart skipped. He straightened his robe and followed, his steps quiet against the glowing floor. The walk through the palace felt longer than usual, though the path was the same. Courtiers whispered as he passed, their silver eyes following him. Some looked curious, some doubtful, some even resentful. He ignored them, keeping his pace steady. At last, he reached a smaller chamber, nothing like the vast throne hall. The walls here glowed with soft blue light, and the air felt calmer, less heavy. Queen Salira stood near a tall window, her back to him, her crown of light shining faintly. "Enter," she said, her voice calm. Ryan stepped inside and bowed. "Your Majesty." She turned to face him. Her expression was not the cold mask she wore before the court. Her eyes still held their sharpness, but there was warmth beneath it, like a hidden flame. "Yesterday you stood in the circle," she said. You spoke words that shook this palace. You declared truth before my people. Do you understand what you have done? Ryan met her gaze. I understand that my words carry weight now. That they cannot be taken back. And I do not wish to take them back. Her lips curved, not into a smile, but into something close. You speak boldly still. I must, Ryan said softly. It is the only way to be true. The queen studied him in silence for a long moment. Then she walked closer, her gown shifting colors like waves under sunlight. When she stood before him, her presence seemed to fill the chamber. My people see you as strange, she said. They do not understand why you chose our tongue, why you dared our vow. Yet I saw no lie in you. I saw no weakness. I saw something different. Ryan's voice was quiet. Perhaps different is what the stars need. Her eyes lingered on him, silver and bright. Perhaps. And yet, difference is also danger. If I accept your words, if I honor them, it will change how my people see both you and me. They will question. They will resist. Not all welcome change. I know, Ryan said. But I also know that fear of change has never built anything. It only keeps walls standing. I do not wish for walls between us. The queen's gaze softened again. For the first time, she looked less like a ruler carved from stone and more like a person carrying a great weight. Your words are simple, she said, yet they are heavy. Others bring polished speeches, sharp promises, clever threats. You bring no more than truth. And still, it cuts deeper than theirs. Ryan's chest tightened. Because truth is the strongest blade. And the strongest bridge. The silence that followed was not heavy but calm. The queen lowered her head slightly, as if in thought. Then she lifted her hand, and with a gesture, the walls of the chamber shifted. Panels slid open, revealing a view of the stars beyond the city. The black sky stretched wide, filled with shining points of light. Look, she said. This is our galaxy. Every light is a world, every world a voice. For centuries, my people have guided many of them. We are strong, yet we grow weary of endless struggles. We see power everywhere, but not always meaning. Yesterday, for the first time in many years, I heard meaning again. Ryan stood beside her, looking out at the stars. His voice was quiet, but steady. Meaning is what makes the stars worth reaching. Without it, even the brightest light fades. She turned her face toward him. Her expression, so often unreadable, now showed a rare softness. You told me you love me, she said. No envoy has ever spoken such words to me. They would fear the weight of them. Yet you carried it. And you carried it with truth. Ryan's heart pounded. He bowed his head slightly. I did. And I still do. The queen studied him for a long moment, her silver eyes unreadable yet alive. Then, to his surprise, she reached out her hand. The light of her crown shimmered brighter as her fingers hovered near his. To speak such words is bold, she said softly. But to live them is greater. If you mean them, then walk beside me not as envoy alone, but as one who dares truth where others fear it. Ryan's breath caught. Slowly, carefully, he placed his hand in hers. Her touch was cool, yet alive with energy. For a moment, the chamber seemed to fall silent, as though the stars themselves held their breath. When she spoke again, her voice carried both strength and warmth. Perhaps your people are not so small after all. Perhaps humanity's strength lies not in fleets or weapons, but in hearts that fear nothing, not even truth. The words struck him deeply. He bowed his head once more, his hand still in hers. Then let humanity's first gift to you be my vow. I will stand by my words. I will not falter. The queen's lips curved again, this time into a true, though small, smile. Then I accept them. And I accept you. The moment lingered, quiet yet powerful. When at last she released his hand, the stars beyond seemed brighter, as if the galaxy itself had changed. Later, when Ryan left the chamber, the courtiers whispered louder than ever. The other envoys glared with envy and fear. Yet none of it mattered. For he had seen what none of them had. The Queen of the Kirin had looked at him not as stranger or rival, but as one who had spoken truth in her own tongue and dared to give her something no one else had offered. Respect, trust, and love. And as Ryan walked through the shining halls of crystal, he knew that humanity's future among the stars had shifted forever.